There is a specific, chilling frequency that a room hits just before a career is dismantled. It's the moment the polite fiction of a congressional hearing evaporates, replaced by the cold, hard realization that a witness has run out of exits. In a high-stakes room on Capitol Hill, the air didn't just shift, it curdled. North Carolina Representative Deborah Ross sat across from Attorney General Pam Bondi, and for the first time in a long time, the usual political dance stopped. What followed wasn't a shouting match or a series of viral soundbites designed for a cable news cycle. It was something much more surgical. It was the sound of a seasoned prosecutor methodically walking the nation's top law enforcement officer into a corner from which no amount of political maneuvering could offer an escape. To understand why the temperature in that room hit sub-zero, you have to look at the name that still sends shivers through the American legal system, Ghislaine Maxwell. We know the history, the 2021 conviction, the federal sex trafficking charges, and the reality that she served as the primary architect for Jeffrey Epstein's global web of abuse. She was handed 20 years, a sentence meant to signal that the era of untouchable elites was over. But behind the steel doors of the federal prison system, a different story was being written. Reports began to leak of a transfer, one that defied standard operating procedure. Maxwell had been moved from a high-security setting in Florida to a minimum-security camp in Texas. This is a facility often referred to in hushed, cynical tones as Club Federation. For a convicted sex offender, this isn't just unusual. According to the rules, it should have been impossible. The details that emerged from this camp were enough to make any survivor's blood run cold. While the young women Maxwell recruited continued to carry the lifelong weight of their trauma, Maxwell was reportedly enjoying puppy time. There were private workouts. There was specialized mail handling and secretarial services. It sounded less like a federal sentence and more like a corporate retreat. The question that hung over the committee was simple. Who signed the paper? Who authorized a convicted child trafficker to receive concierge prison treatment? Deborah Ross didn't start with an accusation. She started with a trap disguised as a handshake. She asked a question so basic it seemed impossible to answer incorrectly. Do you believe convicted sex offenders deserve special treatment in prison? It was an invitation to stand on high moral ground. Bondi took the bait, offering a firm no. But in the world of high-stakes litigation, that no was the first brick in the wall Ross was building. The Congresswoman then laid out a timeline that was as precise as a clock. She pointed to a July interview involving Todd Blanche, formerly Donald Trump's personal defense attorney and now Bondi's own deputy. Within days of that interaction, the transfer happened. The puppy time began. The rules were bent until they snapped. As the pressure mounted, Bondi reached for a classic diversion. It's a tactic used by witnesses who feel the floor disappearing beneath them, their emotional pivot. She suddenly brought up the tragic murder of Irina Zarutska, a young woman killed by an undocumented immigrant. It was a heartbreaking case, but in this room, it was being used as a rhetorical shield. Bondi was trying to shame Ross, trying to suggest that the committee was focusing on the wrong criminal. She even went so far as to claim, twice, that she hoped Maxwell would die in prison. It was a stunning moment, the Attorney General of the United States publicly musing about the death of an inmate in her custody, all to avoid explaining why that same inmate was currently getting private workouts. But Deborah Ross is a civil rights attorney by trade. She doesn't get distracted by the noise. When Bondi tried to pivot back to the murder case a second time, Ross didn't flinch. She didn't get angry. She simply leaned into the microphone and uttered 7 words that effectively ended the performance. But we're going to move back to you. When Bondi snapped back with a sarcastic, I bet we are, Ross delivered the final, devastating blow. She reminded the Attorney General that the purpose of the entire day wasn't to discuss Bondi's preferred talking points. Because you're here to testify, Ross said. That's what the whole point of this endeavor is. It is all about you. In that moment, the power dynamic in the room flipped. Ross wasn't just asking about prison perks anymore. She was exposing a potential back-channel deal that reaches the highest levels of power. She revealed that Maxwell had recently taken the fifth, refusing to answer any questions from Congress. Simultaneously, Maxwell's legal team had begun dangling a very specific carrot. The hint that Maxwell might finally cooperate, but only if the price was right. And that price? A pardon or commutation from the President of the United States. Think about the architecture of that deal. A woman convicted of the most heinous crimes imaginable is sitting in a club-fed facility she isn't eligible for, overseen by an administration whose top lawyer used to defend the man who could set her free. The survivors are watching this. They are seeing the puppy time, the secretarial services, and the political deflections. They are seeing justice being traded for cooperation. As Ross closed her line of questioning, the message was clear: oversight isn't theater. It is a constitutional duty to ensure that the law applies to everyone, even those with friends in the highest of places. The hearing ended, but the questions about what really happened in that Texas prison camp are only beginning to be answered.